Before you scroll past this, in 2024, America produced more wealth than any country in human history, $27 trillion. But that same year, 78% of Americans were living paycheck to paycheck. Let me say that again. The richest country on earth, and 78% of its people can't survive one missed paycheck. That's not an accident. That's not bad luck. That is a system working exactly as designed. And in the next 20 minutes, I'm going to show you exactly how it works, who built it, and why nobody on mainstream media will ever tell you this. Let me ask you something. Do you remember when your parents talked about the future? They were excited. Buy a house, start a family, retire comfortably. That was the deal. Work hard. America rewards you. But somewhere, that deal broke. And you felt it before you could explain it. You got a raise, but somehow you're saving less. You're working harder. But the gap between you and your bills keeps growing. You go to the grocery store, and a bag of eggs costs what a full meal used to cost. This feeling has a name. Economists call it inflation fatigue. But that's not the full story. Because inflation doesn't just happen. Inflation is a result of decisions made by specific people in specific rooms that you were never invited to. Here's the first fact they don't want you to know. Text on screen. Average American wage growth 2020 to 2024, 4.2%. Inflation, same period, 20.8%. Source, BLS.gov. Your wages went up 4%. Everything you buy went up 20%. That's not inflation. That's a transfer. Money didn't disappear. It moved from your pocket to someone else's. Now let's talk about where it went, because this is the part nobody shows you. While you were struggling to pay rent in 2021, 2022, and 2023, the top 1% of Americans added $6.5 trillion to their wealth. $6.5 trillion in 3 years. Source, Federal Reserve Flow of Funds Report. Meanwhile, the bottom 50% of Americans, that's 165 million people, their total combined wealth, $3.8 trillion. Let that sink in. The top 1% gained more in 3 years than the bottom 50% own in total. But here's where it gets darker. You know who decided this would happen? The Federal Reserve. In 2020, they printed $4.5 trillion in new money. They called it stimulus. They said it was to help you. But here's what actually happened. When you print that much money, prices go up. When prices go up, people with assets get richer. When people with assets get richer, the gap between you and them gets bigger. And who owns the most assets in America? The top 1%. So they printed money, gave some to you as a check, and gave the rest to Wall Street. You got $1,400. They got $6.5 trillion. Federal Reserve printed $4.5 trillion in 2020. Top 1% wealth gained 2020 to 2023. $6.5 trillion. Source federalreserve.gov. So who is the villain in this story? It's not one person, it's a system. 3 systems, actually, working together that were specifically designed to keep the middle class exactly where they are. System 1, the debt trap. In 1980, the average American household carried almost zero credit card debt. Today, Americans owe $1.3 trillion in credit card debt alone, at an average interest rate of 24.6%. That means for every $1,000 you owe, you're paying $246 every year just in interest. Not paying off debt, just interest. This didn't happen by accident. In 1978, a Supreme Court decision called Marquette National Bank versus First of Omaha allowed banks to charge their home state's interest rate, so every major bank moved to states with zero limits. Overnight, your credit card had no ceiling. Before that ruling, charging 24% interest was illegal in most states. After that ruling, every bank in America raced to the top, and the middle class was handed a trap, disguised as convenience. System 2, the housing trap. In 1970, the median home price in America was $17,000. Median household income was $9,800. A house cost less than 2 years of salary. Today, median home price is $420,000. Median household income is $74,000. A house now costs more than 5 years of salary. But wages didn't fall. So what happened? Institutional investors happened. Companies like BlackRock, Invitation Homes, and American Homes, for rent, started buying single-family homes by the thousands, not to live in, to rent out. In 2023 alone, institutional investors bought 26% of all single-family homes sold in America. 26%. So when you couldn't find a house or couldn't afford one, it wasn't just supply and demand. It was a deliberate strategy to turn American homeowners into permanent renters. System 3, the wage trap. Since 1979, American worker productivity has increased by 61%, meaning workers are producing 61% more value, but wages, they only grew 17.5% in the same period. Source, Economic Policy Institute. So who kept the other 43%? Corporate profits. In 2023, corporate profit margins hit their highest level since 1950. While workers were told, there's no money for raises. Still think this is a coincidence? Let me give you 3 more facts. Fact 1. The average CEO in America makes 399 times more than their average worker. In 1965, that ratio was on 21 to 1. Same country, same capitalism. What changed? Fact 2. America is the only developed country in the world with no guaranteed paid sick leave, no paid maternity leave, no universal health care. Every other G7 country has all 3. This isn't because America can't afford it. America spends more on health care per person than any country on earth and gets worse outcomes than most. The money exists, it just doesn't go to you. Fact 3. In 2023, while 60% of Americans reported skipping meals to save money, America's 10 richest people added $300 billion to their wealth. $300 billion in 1 year. This is not an accident. This is not bad luck. This is a machine, and you are the fuel. So let me bring this back to that feeling that something is wrong, that feeling that you're doing everything right but still falling behind. That feeling is not in your head. It is real. It has a cause, and it has names attached to it. The Federal Reserve, Wall Street, institutional investors, corporate lobbying. These are not conspiracy theories. These are public records available on federalreserve.gov, BLS.gov, Census.gov. They don't hide this information. They just know most people will never look. That's what this channel is for. Every week, I find what they buried in the data, and I bring it here. If this video showed you something you didn't know before, follow this channel, because next week, I'm going to show you exactly how the housing market was quietly turned into a wealth extraction machine, and what it means for every middle-class American who still thinks they can afford to buy a home. They don't want you to know this, but now you do.